Thunder rolls over the Kansas plains. A blood-soaked dawn spills across a broken fence line. Wind rattles the shutters of an old farmhouse. Half collapsed, its roof caving like a skull split in battle. A rider gallops hard toward the ruined homestead, dust curling off the horse's hooves like smoke. He reins, and suddenly when he sees her, an old woman sits slumped on the porch, dress soaked with red, a rifle laid across her knees. Her head rests on her chest, unmoving. Flies buzz. A letter is pinned to her blouse, written in charcoal on old ledger paper. To whom it may concern, this land was stolen. We took it back, and we'll die before we lose it again. The rider dismounts. His badge glints in the light. Sheriff Bart McKee of McBride County. He bends, reads the letter, and mutters, "God help us. The Morgan girls are still alive." 3 weeks earlier, the Morgan sisters, Sadie, 17, Clara, 16, June, 15, and baby Rosie, 8, slept in the barn of what was once their father's ranch. Nothing remained of the old Morgan homestead but charred beams and a family Bible blackened by fire. Their daddy, Elias Morgan, a Civil War veteran turned rancher, had hanged himself beneath the cottonwood tree 2 winters back after the land was stripped from him by a crooked railroad lawyer named Josiah Finch. Mama died slow, coughing blood into a rag. Then the bang came. Now, the 4 girls scraped by on scraps and stolen chickens. Clara watched over Rosie like a mother hen. June skinned rabbits and counted stars. Sadie? She boiled in silence. Sadie Morgan hadn't smiled in 2 years. One morning, a rider came, a foreman with Finch's brand on his saddle and whiskey on his breath. He said the barn was on Finch's deed now, said they had till sundown to clear out. He left laughing, unaware of the eyes tracking him through the slats. That night, Sadie dug up the old box buried behind the chicken coop. Inside, wrapped in canvas, was their father's Colt Navy revolver, still oiled, still loaded. She showed it to her sisters by firelight. The flames danced in her eyes. "We're not running. Not this time." They scouted the Finch estate, 20 miles east, surrounded by mesquite and guarded by hired guns. But Sadie knew the land better. Their land. For 3 nights, they watched from the tree lean. Finch's men drank deep and slept harder. The big house glowed like a lighthouse of sin. Sadie waited. June sewed pockets into Clara's petticoat. Rosie cried when she found out what they planned. Clara held her tight. "We're just talking back what's ours, Rosie. That ain't stealing. That's settling accounts." The night they moved, lightning flashed over prairie. Sadie led the way, rifle strapped to her back, the revolver at her hip. Clara carried a satchel. June gripped a lantern. Rosie was left behind, inside a hollow tree with a note around her neck. "If we don't come back, she's the last of the Morgans." They slipped past the barn dogs with bacon fat on rags, avoided the porch guards by crawling through a dry creek bed. The back window was unlocked. Finch never expected girls. Inside, the mansion smelled of cigars and paper money. Gold-framed portraits glared down at them. Sadie moved like smoke. They found Finch in his study, asleep in a velvet chair, ledger on his chest, pistol on the desk beside a half-drunk bottle of rye. Sadie leveled her father's revolver at the man who'd taken everything. She didn't hesitate. Click. Not the trigger. The camera on the wall. June spotted it too late. Finch jolted awake. "Well, now, what in hell?" he rasped, going for his gun. Too slow. Sadie's shot hit him in the shoulder, sending him sprawling. Clara rushed for the safe. June kept watch through the curtains. Thunder cracked. Horses stirred. They grabbed what they could. Deeds, a pouch of gold coins, the old land certificate Elias Morgan had bled for. Finch groaned on the floor, clutching his arm. Sadie hovered above him. "You stole our land, burned our name. You think that paper means nothing? That's our life, you bastard." Finch spat blood and sneered. "Loss is otherwise, girl." She wanted to pull the trigger again, wanted to watch him vanish like her father's pride. But Clara grabbed her. "Sadie, don't. Please. We got what we came for." They fled into the storm. By dawn, they were fugitives. Posters went up within days. Wanted, Morgan girls, armed and dangerous, $300 reward. Rumors churned through the saloons and church pews. Said the youngest shot a man between the eyes. One of them's pregnant with the sheriff's bastard. They ride with Apache now. I heard it from a rancher's boy. Sheriff McKee rode out with 5 men and a preacher. Said he aimed to bring the girls back decent, dead or not. But Sadie knew the hills, the caves, the dry riverbeds. She knew where her daddy took wounded strays during the war. They holed up in an old stone chapel near Black Hollow. Deserted, crumbling, safe. There, June sewed the stolen deed into her corset. Clara cleaned Sadie's wound from a grazing bullet. Rosie, who'd been found by an old trapper and brought back to them, didn't ask where the blood came from. She just hugged her sisters and said, I saw Ma in my dreams. She said not to be afraid no more. Sheriff McKee found the chapel 6 days later. He came alone, no badge on his coat, no pistol on his belt, just a small Bible in one hand, and in the other, a photograph. It showed Elias Morgan in uniform, younger, smiling, arm around a fellow soldier. Your father saved my life at Antietam, McKee said quietly, standing in the doorway while the girls aimed rifles at his chest. I ain't here to hang nobody, but you can't run forever. The law's coming. Finch wants blood, and he's got the money to buy it. Sadie didn't lower her gun. Then let him come. This time we got teeth. The wind howled through Black Hollow like a pack of wolves mourning something already lost. Rain hammered the chapel roof, water dripping through a crack that ran down the spine of the altar like a wound. The girls barely breathed as Sheriff McKee stepped inside, soaked to the bone, his boots sinking into the wet earth between the pews. He didn't reach for his gun. He wasn't carrying one. He just stood there, holding out a folded photograph in a weathered hand. Sadie took it with the barrel of her father's Colt still trained on his heart. She didn't blink as she studied the faded image. 2 men in Union blue, arms slung over each other's shoulders. One of them, her father. The other, a boy-faced version of the Lawmen standing in front of her. I bled out on the Tennessee line, he said. Your daddy patched me up and carried me 4 miles under cannon fire. Told me I'd owe him one, and I reckon he was right. No one spoke. The only sound was June's soft breathing. Fingers twitching near the trigger of the rifle, she held aim from the pulpit side. Clara sat close to Rosie, who clung to a damp blanket, eyes wide and shining. He was a good man, McKee went on. Too good for a town that lets men like Finch carve it up like a Sunday hog. But what you did, that shot fire straight through this county spine. You girls just stepped into legend. Problem is, legends die young in these parts. Sadie finally lowered the gun. Just a little. Her voice came like gravel soaked in grief. He took everything. Burned our home. Bought off the courts. Left Ma to rot. I was 12 the first time I saw him spit at Daddy's boots. 17 when he laughed as they nailed that auction notice on our door. Clara stood up. We didn't steal. We reclaimed. That deed was ours before his name ever touched it. McKee nodded. That's not how the judge will see it. Finch already paid the circuit court. Bought the testimony of his own damn doctor. Says you girls attacked him without cause. Claims you tried to murder him in cold blood. That's what's being printed from Wichita to Abilene. June whispered. What about the safe? The land papers. They're gone, McKee said. Burned in a fire 2 nights after. Finch's men said it was bandits. I bet my badge he lit that match himself. Sadie's hands curled tight. Her father's gun trembled in her grip. So it's done. We're ghosts. No, the sheriff said. You're seeds. You can disappear. Go west. Start over. Rosie looked up, voice soft. But this was our land. McKee met her eyes, and for the first time, the weight of all he carried cracked through his voice. Sometimes land has more blood than dirt. Your daddy knew that in the end. He turned to go, pausing only to say, You've got till first light. After that, I can't protect you. By the time the sun touched the canyon rim, the Morgan girls were gone. The chapel sat empty, only the smell of wood smoke and wild sage left behind. They rode hard and silent, weaving through dry arroyos and cactus-strewn gullies, traveling by night. They headed west, Not for California, but for a ghost town Sadie remembered from a map in her father's journal. Dry Creek Ridge, an abandoned silver settlement nestled in the foothills, cursed by flood and fever. But it was hidden, forgotten, safe. In the dusk of the fifth evening, they reached it. Half the buildings had collapsed. The others stood like tombstones. They made camp what was once a jailhouse, its bars rusted through, its doors swinging in the breeze like a noose. That night, Clara sat with June beside a low fire. We're not going to survive out here long. We need supplies, ammo, tools. Sadie knelt by the fire, unwrapping the oilskin around her father's gun. She stared at it like it was a compass pointing to ruin. Then we take what we need. Finch ain't the only devil wearing velvet in this territory. There's plenty who wouldn't miss a coin pouch or two. Clara's eyes darkened. You're talking about becoming what we hate. I'm talking about living. We can't pray our way out of this, Clara. Rosie woke in the night from a dream. She said she saw a black horse with fire for eyes chasing him across the plains. June told her it was just the wind playing tricks. But Sadie stayed awake, watching the stars shift and wondering if the storm wasn't already galloping behind them. They started small. A lone freight wagon left unguarded. A dead drop along the old stage line. Once, they stole flour and boots from a mining outpost while the men were drunk. They moved like shadows, like spirits. No one suspected for girls. Not until one job went wrong. It was a car den out near Devil's Branch. Sadie had marked the place, a shack where riverboat gamblers came to lose their sins. They waited for full moon, slipped inside while the game was in full roar, and Sadie pulled her gun before the men could stand. Clara scooped the gold. June watched the door. But one man, old and scarred, didn't flinch. He looked at Sadie and smiled. You're Elias Morgan's girl. She froze. You got his eyes. Same fire. Same madness. He ever tell you what he did at Shiloh? How he shot a boy running with a white flag. Sadie's hand shook. June yelled, Sadie. But it was too late. The man lunged. The table flipped. Gunfire cracked like bone splitting. Clara screamed. The smoke cleared. 2 men lay dead. Clara had been grazed. The rest fled into the brush, leaving blood in their wake. They rode for days. Silent. Empty. The stolen coins jingled like guilt. At a creek bed, Clara threw the bag into the water. We become monsters, she whispered. Sadie didn't argue. She just stared down at her hands, still stained from the fight. We never had the chance to be anything else. They found refuge with an old widow who remembered Elias from the war. Her name was Miss Delahanty, and she lived alone in a cabin overrun with vines. She patched them up, fed them stew, and said nothing about the guns they carried. You girls are hunted, she finally said, but I've lived long enough to know the law's a liar when gold changes hands. She showed them a map drawn in charcoal on deer-hide, old Apache trails that wound through canyons no white man had ever dared settle. Take this. Follow it north. There's a place they call Widow's Crossing. You can disappear there. Start over. Rosie clutched Sadie's sleeve that night. Are we bad people now? Sadie knelt down, brushing the girl's tangled hair back. No, Rosie. Bad people don't ask that question. As they prepared to leave, Miss Delahanty handed Sadie a wrapped bundle. Inside was a Bible. Inside the Bible was a small bullet lodged between the pages. Your daddy carried that, she said. Said it stopped more than lead. Said it stopped him from shooting a man he hated. Sadie stared at the hole in the scripture. Psalm 23. Torn clean through, her fingers trembled. On the trail that night, as the moon rose over the ridge and the sound of coyotes echoed through the canyons, she rode at the front. The Bible was in her saddlebag. Her father's gun was still warm from the last fire. Behind her, her sisters followed. Together, they rode toward Widow's Crossing, carrying everything they had, blood, memory, and a stolen name. And behind them, the smoke still hadn't settled. The moon hung low over Widow's Crossing, casting long silver shadows over the wind-scrubbed rocks. The Morgan sisters rode in silence, for silhouettes against a desolate ridge, their breath misting in the frigid air. The trail behind them had vanished, buried beneath wind-blown sand and time. But something darker still followed. A whisper of vengeance too stubborn to die. They reached a bluff at dawn. Below, tucked in a narrow valley, stood a dozen scattered buildings, a chapel missing its bell, a post office with one wall caved in, and a saloon leaning like a drunk against the morning light. Widow's Crossing wasn't a town anymore. It was a graveyard pretending to remember life. They made shelter in the old stable. June repaired what she could. Clara boiled water and taught Rosie to whistle through her teeth. But Sadie, she watched the ridge. Always the ridge. 2 nights later, a sound came through the valley. Hoofbeats. 6 riders. 1 carriage. Josiah Finch had found them. The man stepped down from the carriage in a velvet coat dusted with ash. His left arm still hung stiff from the bullet Sadie had given him, but his smile was intact, gleaming like a blade unsheathed. "Sadie Morgan," he called out, voice smooth and cruel, "you should have killed me when you had the chance." Sadie stood atop the chapel steps, rifle in hand, her father's revolver heavy on her hip. "You burned our home. You stole our land. What else do you want?" Finch removed his gloves slowly, dramatically. "I want the myth to end. You've stirred something dangerous, girl. Folks whisper your name in barrooms and bunkhouses. You made me look weak." "You are weak," she said. "You just bought power." Behind her, June had positioned herself on the stable roof, rifle aimed. Clara and Rosie hid in the cellar with the Bible and the deed. Finch looked up at the steeple. "You've got 10 minutes to come down and burn that deed. I'll even let your sisters live." Sadie's voice was a low growl. "You've mistaken me for someone afraid of dying." He laughed. "Then you've sentenced them all." The first shot rang out before the echo of his laughter faded. One of Finch's men dropped from his saddle. Neck snapped back. June's aim never missed. Gunfire exploded through the valley. Finch's men scattered, returning fire. Bullets splintered wood. Clara emerged with the second rifle, handing Rosie the Bible like it was armor. "Hide. Don't come out till you hear singing or nothing at all." Sadie moved through smoke and chaos, rifle brace against her shoulder. She fired, ducked, moved again. Her breath was steady. Her blood ice. This wasn't vengeance now. It was survival, earned through fire and bone. Then she saw McKee. The sheriff had ridden hard to reach them. No badge, no posse, just his horse and his regret. He came to the canyon alone, eyes scanning for a miracle he feared was too late. Sadie shouted his name as a bullet tore past her ear. He galloped straight into the storm, drawing fire, giving cover. 2 more Finch's men fell. June took a shot to the leg, but kept firing from her perch. Clara knelt beside her, reloading, her hand steady even as tears blurred her vision. Finch ducked behind the saloon doors, breathing hard, his eyes wild. Then Sadie was there. Inside the saloon, dust and light floated like ghosts. Finch turned to see her silhouette in the doorway, gun drawn, eyes ablaze. He reached for his pistol, but she was faster. A shot echoed. He staggered, dropped the weapon. Sadie walked forward, slowly, every step heavy with the weight of years. Finch gasped, blood blooming through his coat. "You're your father's daughter." She aimed again, but her hand hesitated. He saw it, smiled bitter. "Do it. Be like him. Make it ugly." McKee stepped in then, gun lowered. "Sadie?" She trembled. "He deserves it." The sheriff nodded. "Yes, but so did the man your father spared. That bullet in your Bible, it wasn't just lead. It was mercy." She stared at Finch. He was shaking now, his blood pooling at her feet. "I'm not him," she said, voice hollow. She turned and walked away. Behind her, Finch collapsed against the bar, coughing red. McKee took off his coat, covered June's leg. Clara sobbed quietly. Rosie emerged from the cellar with the Bible in her arms and knelt beside her sisters. The battle was over. Finch was arrested. The land deed, once burned, had been recopied from the original Elias, had hidden in the Bible's binding. McKee took it to the judge in Wichita himself. It wouldn't give them back their past, but it might buy them a future. Weeks passed. Sadie stood under the cottonwood tree, the one her father had chosen as his final rest. The wind rustled the branches gently. She laid the revolver down at its roots. Then the Bible. Then her father's photograph, torn from its edges and folded like a flag. Clara came up behind her. "It's done." Sadie nodded. "No, it's just beginning." They rebuilt the ranch. Planted corn where ashes once lay. June taught Rosie how to shoot, how to read, how to ride. McKee visited when he could, always leaving behind small gifts, nails, flour, news. One day, a rider passed through town. Said he heard about 4 sisters who defied the devil and won. Said they were legends now. Sadie didn't answer. She just looked at the ridge where the sun burned low, touched the locket around her neck, her mother's, and whispered a single word: home. If this story stirred something in your soul, leave your thoughts in the comments. Like and subscribe for more forgotten frontier tales that still echo in the dust.